Ready to ditch the textbooks and dive into some seriously epic history?
I am. Where are we diving today?
Buckle up, because we're tackling the book of Judges.
Oh,
And trust me,
sounds intense.
this isn't Sunday school anymore.
No kidding. What makes Judges so different?
Well, think Game of Thrones meets the Old Testament.
Okay, now you've got my attention. I'm intrigued.
We're talking about what happens right after the Israelites enter the Promised Land. After Jericho. Big walls, big battle, big victory. You'd think it'd be smooth sailing from there, right?
Makes sense, yeah. New land. Fresh start.
Not so fast. Judges chapter 1 throws us right into the thick of it. Israelites are like, okay, God, who's next? What army do we take down now? They are ready for round 2.
Sounds like they're on a roll.
But here's the catch, and this is a big one.
Okay, I'm listening.
They kind of, sort of, maybe forgot to, actually drive out all the Canaanites like they were supposed to.
Oh, that's not good. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
You got that right. They won some battles, sure, but then they did something totally unexpected.
What did they do?
They started living alongside their enemies. Imagine those block parties.
Awkward. Talk about awkward neighbors. What were they thinking?
Right. So tell me, why was that such a big deal? What happened?
Well, you're talking about living with the enemy. Literally, it's not just about being neighborly. It created some serious vulnerabilities. I mean, you've got different cultures, different beliefs, different gods even, all mashed up together.
Okay, so not just a recipe for an awkward Thanksgiving then. More like a recipe for disaster.
Exactly. It's like they set themselves up for failure.
So they basically invited disaster right into their backyard by living among their enemies. Why do you think they did that?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's a question that still resonates today. Why do we compromise? Why do we settle for what's comfortable instead of what we know is right? Think about it.
It's like they forgot who they were, where they came from, everything God had done for them.
Exactly. We were chipping away at their foundation. It's like they were forgetting their own identity.
Speaking of forgetting, we meet this guy, Adoni-Bezek, in Judges 1. Now, this guy, he really missed the memo on how to be a good neighbor. What's the story there?
Oh, Adoni-Bezek. Yeah, he was notorious for his brutality.
Yeah.
But let's just say karma had a way of catching up.
I was going to say, Judges 1.67 paints a very vivid picture of what happened to him. And, well, let's just say it's not pretty.
Definitely not for the faint of heart. It's a brutal reminder of the times. But it also brings up a question. Is violence ever truly the answer?
That's a heavy question. What are your thoughts?
Well, Adoni-Bezek himself says, as they're punishing him, as I have done, so God has repaid me. He knew what he was doing was wrong. It makes you think about cycles of violence and whether they ever really end.
It's like that old saying, what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
Except in this case, it's a lot more intense than just bad karma.
Right. And it makes you wonder, does violence ever really lead to lasting peace? Or does it just keep the cycle going?
Big questions for sure. But hey, before we get too deep into that, let's move on to the stars of the show, the judges. And trust me, when you picture a judge, erase those images of robes and gavels.
Oh, who are we talking about that?
We're talking warriors, assassins. We've even got a farmer in the mix who takes down bad guys with an ox goad. This is where the Game of Thrones part really comes in.
An ox goad. Wow, that's a new one. Okay, now I need to hear more about these judges. Who are they and what do they do?
It's like God works in mysterious ways, but in this case, it's through some pretty unexpected heroes. And speaking of unexpected, can we talk about Ehud for a sec? His story in Judges 3 is wild.
Oh, Ehud. Definitely one for the books. He really embodies that whole idea of never judge a book by its cover. Or in this case, never judge a warrior by his. Well, you'll see.
Okay, so for those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Ehud in their Bible studies, give us the rundown. Who is this guy?
All right, picture this. The Israelites are under the thumb of King Eglon. Not the nicest guy, and let's just say, not exactly known for his trim physique.
I'm getting that visual. Okay, so not the best of kings. What does Ehud have to do with this?
Well, Ehud, who by the way is a left-handed warrior, which was a big deal back then, manages to snag a private audience with the king, says he's got a message. Secret message.
Ooh, sneaky. I like this already. So what happens next?
Ehud shows up at the meeting, right? But he's packing a little something extra under his cloak. A double-edged sword, to be exact. And, well, let's just say he uses a very specific element of surprise to take down the king. Let's just say it involves a very unfortunate bathroom situation for Eglon.
Okay, I'm both impressed and slightly terrified. Talk about thinking outside the box, or maybe inside the palace in this case. It really makes you realize how brutal those times were.
Yeah, no kidding. But Ehud's story isn't just about shock value. It really highlights two important things. First, His guts and ingenuity. Talk about dedication. This guy was willing to risk it all to save his people, even if it meant, well,
Yeah, we'll just leave that part to the imagination.
right. And second, it reinforces that idea that God was with them, even when they were making questionable choices. Like, Ehud couldn't have pulled this off without some serious divine intervention, don't you think?
You've got a point. It's like this constant back and forth throughout the book of Judges. Humans messing up, God stepping in, rinse and repeat.
Exactly. It's a wild ride, that's for sure.
Speaking of wild rides, Judges chapter 2 always gets me. This is where things get real. It's not just about land or winning battles anymore. It's about something way deeper. What are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. Judges chapter 2 is like the turning point. It exposes the real issue. The Israelites messed up relationship with God. They were straight up rebelling against him.
Okay, so what does that look like in real life? What were they actually doing? Give us the details.
Think of it this way. They were turning their backs on God, worshiping other gods, embracing all the customs of the very people they were supposed to push out. Talk about a slap in the face.
It's like they had a serious case of amnesia, forgetting who they were, where they came from, and everything God had done for them.
It's a classic case of out of sight, out of mind. The Israelites, they were constantly being pulled in different directions, tempted by all these different influences.
It makes you wonder if those temptations ever really go away, even today.
Good question. But that's a conversation for another time, perhaps.
Okay, fair enough. But back to the Israelites. This phrase keeps popping up, and it's kind of eerie when you think about it. The sons of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord. It's like a broken record. You'd think they'd learn. Why do you think they keep messing up? It's like they're stuck on repeat. Mess up, face the music, cry out for help, God bails them out, enjoy the peace, and then bam! They forget everything and do it all again. What's the deal with that?
It's the human condition in a nutshell, isn't it? We're experts at making the same mistakes, even when we swear we won't. We forget the past, we forget God's goodness, and end up right back where we started.
It's frustrating, but also kind of relatable, right? It's like, come on, guys, get it together. But then I think, haven't we all been there? We make promises, we set goals, we vow to change, and then life happens.
We're all a work in progress. That's what makes the book of Judges so powerful, even after all these years. It's not just some dusty old history book. It's a reflection of us, our struggles, our potential for good and, well, not so good.
So, big picture time, since you love that so much. If we're sitting across from our listeners right now, what's the one thing we want them to take away from all this ancient drama? Why should they care about a bunch of judges and battles from thousands of years ago?
That's the question, isn't it? What can we learn from these stories? I think at the heart of it, Judges reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles. Everyone faces battles, whether it's something big and scary or those internal battles we fight with ourselves.
We all deal with temptation, making tough choices, trying to be good people. It's that universal experience.
Absolutely. And the amazing part is this. Even when things are falling apart, even when the Israelites are at their worst, completely turned away from God, he still hears them.
Really? Even then? That's kind of amazing when you think about it.
It is. He still raises up these leaders, these judges, to help them again and again. God's love isn't some prize for being perfect. It's there, even when we don't deserve it. Second chances, grace, redemption, the whole package.
That's pretty reassuring, especially since, let's face it, we all mess up a lot. But it also makes you think, who are the judges in our own lives today? Who do we turn to when we need guidance, strength, a little courage to face our own giants, metaphorically speaking, of course?
Now, there's a question worth pondering. Who inspires you? Who pushes you to be better, to live a life that matters? Who reminds you what really counts?
It's not about finding a superhero, right? It's about those everyday heroes all around us. Mentors, friends, family, even public figures who just embody the qualities we admire.
It's about being open to their influence, letting their wisdom and example shape our own journeys.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Judges, let's take a moment to think about those people. The ones who've made a difference in our lives, challenged us, encouraged us, helped us become who we are today. Now picture them not just as these influential figures, but as our own judges, guiding us, shaping us, walking with us through life's ups and downs.
Powerful, isn't it? We're all connected. And the impact of those who lead with wisdom, with courage, with compassion, it lasts.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder your own judges. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.